Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie. I'm a book-loving, notebook-hoarding reader and writer on a mission to change lives one book and one notebook at a time. And this is the Get Literate podcast. On this podcast, we explore the power of leading literate lives. We talk all things books and reading, notebooks and writing, and everything in between to make our lives better. And no matter what better means to you, the pages inside books and notebooks can help us get there. So, each week, we'll mix together books, notebooks, mindful practices, and creativity to cultivate a life we love. Now, grab a notebook and your TBR list, and let's get literate. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Get Literate podcast. I'm Stephanie, and I am here with a little bit of literate love for the month of April in 2023. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I love to set aside an extra episode that just talks all things literate love in my own life. Not attached to a podcast episode, not attached to a theme or a guest or a project, but just what I'm actually reading and writing and learning and loving as we go through the month. So that's what this episode is all about today. I'm here to share all of those things as they have played out in my April of 2023. So let's start what I've been reading. Now remember, what I'm sharing with you today are just quick snippets of the books that I've read throughout the month, pretty much by reading my quick reviews of them online. Now, some of them I read just because, some of them I read because I was part of a book club, and some of them I've read for upcoming podcast episodes. So I've chosen to leave some of them out, but some of them I am giving you a sneak peek here, but know that some of them may come up on the podcast in later episodes. So what did I learn this week or this month about my reading? I read a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 books I have to share with you today. 10 books. I do not normally read 10 books in a single month. And as I gathered this list together, I had to stop and double check. Am I sure that I read all of these in April? Did I mix up and not report everything that I've read in March? How did I manage to read 10 books in the month of April? And I realized something really important about myself as a human and about myself as a reader. And that is when things get challenging, I get quiet. So there have been some challenging things going on in my world, just like there are in everybody else's. And when that happens, I tend to go inward. And I tend to read more as an escape, as a way to get lost in the everyday craziness of someone else's lives instead of my own. And so I did devour a lot of fiction novels in this particular month. And for the first month ever, all of them were adult literature. Not one children's literature book on my list. I don't like that. I strive for 50-50. I love reading kids' books as an adult. It's also part of my everyday job as a children's literature professor. But I guess my life needed a little bit of adult tending to instead. So I have 10 books that I want to bring to you. But don't worry, I'm only going to give you a quick review of each one, and then maybe a select 2 or 3 I'll bring into later episodes of the podcast. So first up is a new Zibby Books publication called Women Are the Fiercest Creatures by Andrea Dunlop. So I dare you to open up this book, read the prologue, and not postpone the rest of your to-do list until you've read the whole thing. It's that good. It's that compelling. It is that much of a hook. Now, in this book, we meet Anna, Sam, and Jessica, 3 women who have fallen for the same man at different points of their lives, and they have paid the price for it. As each of them reckon with the individual choices they've made, and yes, as they dare to think about a different future, we see how the stories of these three women come together in powerful and even shocking ways. And I'm going to leave it at that and just say that women really are the fiercest creatures, and this book truly embodies that belief. It is a must-read book that I need you to add to your stack. It just came out in March, and it is a good one. Now, the second book that I'm bringing to you is a nonfiction kind of wooey book, if you will. I heard it mentioned on the Kathy Heller podcast. And because I love all things Kathy Heller and I'm learning about health and wellness and science and psychology and energetics and all of those things, I knew I wanted to read this book. It's called Into the Magic Shop, a neurosurgeon's quest to discover the mysteries of the brain and the secrets of the heart. When a neurosurgeon embraces the woo of the world, you know that you need to listen and you need to learn. I've read a lot of books on the power of mindset and abundance and manifestation, but not one quite like this. So Dr. Doty gives us this unique glimpse into the workings of the brain and the heart as he shares the life lessons he learned so long ago from a kind woman in a magic shop that literally changed the trajectory of his life. So the book really is propelled by his compelling narrative, but it is filled with this practical wisdom, this science-based evidence, and these everyday tangible activities that we could actually apply to our own life. And I promise you, if you read the whole thing, you will turn the last page feeling definitely curious, hopeful, and inspired for what might lie ahead for you if you just sit with these ideas for a little bit. So that's Into the Magic Shop by Dr. Doty. Up next is a Frederick Bachman novella. So I loved Beartown. I'm still working my way through that trilogy, but I had heard so much about this particular book, and it was a short, quick read. You could read it in under an hour, so I picked it up. It's called And Every Morning, the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer. So this is a pretty personally powerful book. It's a beautiful short story about the power of the mind and what happens when it loses control. So the story actually takes place inside the mind of a grandfather who is struggling with dementia and desperately trying to hold on to his memories. But it's also about the story of his son and his grandson trying to grapple with his new reality and how to best support him. For anyone who has ever been close to Alzheimer's or dementia, you will feel seen in this book. And if not, you won't be able to walk away without a newfound understanding, appreciation, and quite frankly, awe for anyone who is close to Alzheimer's or who is going through it personally. It is that powerful of a book, and I know I will be featuring it much later in the year in an upcoming episode. That's And Every Morning, the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Bachman. If you want a quick read that's going to make you think about your own life, then this is the book you should pick up. Now, next, I have another book on the power of the mind, but it's much different and it's amazing. It's Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb. Now, I know this book has gotten a lot of press. It's taken me a while to read it. It was first published in April of 2019, and I'm not reading it until April of 2023, but that's okay. Books are patient, and this book was worth the wait. This book felt like a gift. It was a gift of self-reflection, a gift of introspection, and even a gift of miniature transformation. So in it, we're lucky enough to learn from Lori Gottlieb and her raw honesty as she navigates her own life in therapy as a therapist. So I was struck by her story. She was finding her life's passion after a few false starts. She was choosing her own path to motherhood, dealing with this crazy sudden breakup, and just grappling with all sorts of life revelations. The book was a narrative, so it was interspersed with her stories, the stories of her patients, but also research and the philosophy behind her work. It was fascinating to me, and it was also incredibly therapeutic. And I don't think you can read it without walking away with a newfound understanding of yourself and your own role that you actually play in yourself. I know that seems silly to say, but this book gets you to see that you actually might have more power than you think. I definitely think it is a must read. Now, next up, I'm going to switch back to fiction, and this is called How Not to Drown in a Glass of Water by Angie Cruz. I first heard this on Zibby Owens' podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books, and I was so intrigued. The author was talking about the experience of writing it, what she wanted to get out of it. The cover was so compelling. So I picked it up, and honestly, it was unlike any other reading experience I've had. It was actually set as a conversation between Kara, who was a middle-aged woman searching for a job, and her job counselor. It was set during the Depression, and through these series of meetings that they have, we learn about Kara's stories. So it was completely written as this conversational flow, and it was amazing. We learned about the story of her difficult childhood, her dangerous marriage, her son's heartbreaking abandonment, and her fierce loyalty to her family and her friends and her community. The book shows just how important it is for us to connect on a human level with others, to talk, to listen, to learn, to hope, and in some cases, to survive. This book truly shows that our stories matter, and I'm going to be keeping Kara's story pretty close to my heart for a while. If you're looking for a different kind of reading experience, then I highly suggest How Not to Drown in a Glass of Water by Angie Cruz. Now, up next is a true comfort read for me. You know, I love Jenny Colgan. I love a book about a cupcake. I love a book about a chocolate shop. This book was just what I needed to escape. This book is called The Secret, Book, and Scone Society. So it's not The Secret Book and Scone Society. It's The Secret, comma, Book, comma, and Scone Society. I just want to clarify that because that matters to this story. So this book is the ultimate comfort book. It's written by Ellery Adams. And it's not only the ultimate comfort book, but it's especially a comfort book for those who purposefully use books to heal, like I did. So Nora is Miracle Springs' sole bookstore owner, and she moved to the area to escape her past and start a new life. She offers her bibliotherapy services. Ding, 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 gotta love the book. She offers her bibliotherapy services to each of her customers so that they can experience the magical healing of books as she has. I won't go into the story of how and why she needed books and what that journey looked like, but just know that she experienced it firsthand and she wants to share it with others. She's getting ready for a bibliotherapy session with a new customer, but that customer is suddenly murdered. Now, I am usually not a murder mystery reader, but stay with me. When that happens, her quiet little existence changes. She goes out of her comfort zone. She finds new friendships, new confidence, maybe even new love, as her secret book and Scone Society circle of friends attempts to solve multiple murders and save a fellow member. Honestly, this book had it all. It's a book about books. It's got newfound friendship, finding yourself, and the most intriguing part, personalized scones. You're going to have to read the book to find more. But quite frankly, I was in bookish heaven with this book. And thankfully, there's more. This is just the start of a series that I am happily going to follow. That's The Secret, Book, and Scone Society by Ellery Adams. Now, up next is a book that I had to read. Why did I have to read it? Because it came into my world 3 times. Yes, I have that rule that if I see or am recommended a book at least 3 times, then that means the universe wants me to pick it up. And so that's how I encountered this book. And I can see why. This story. And if you're wondering what that story is, it's I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Makkai. This story was so compelling. The writing was incredibly strong, but the format was what really drew me in. The format was different than most books I've read. So it's about Bodie Kane. Bodie Kane returned to her boarding school in the Northeast to teach podcasting and film. She is a podcaster. She teaches film out in California. She's returning to her home boarding school to do the same. But when she does, she unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, becomes completely entrenched in this decades-old murder of her fellow Granby classmate. So the book is actually written as a narrative to a character. Now, I'm not going to spoil that character, but what that format allows us to do is to literally follow Bodhi's inner thinking, which I just love. You literally feel like you're in your head, but you also get to see her hypotheses of the murders and what might have happened in each of those situations, along with what's actually going on in Bodhi's real life in the moment. It's just this beautiful weaving of all of those elements. Kept me on my toes. I did have to keep track of the characters and the clues that I was finding. And just when I thought I had it figured out, I didn't. So this is a book that is definitely going to keep you turning the pages. That's I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Makkai. All right, we're getting down the list here. We've got 3 to go. The next book that I want to share is another Zibby Books. Now, you've probably heard me talk about Zibby Books quite often lately, and that's just because I have loved every single book that has come out of Zibby Books. I mentioned it on social media, but I truly feel like all of Zibby's books so far have just been so immersive. I have instantly connected with the characters and have taken away something important for every single one of them. These books are passion projects, and you can feel it. And even if the topic is historical gardening or dance or massage therapy, you can't help but figure out a better way for yourself to live while you are reading these. And I've said that multiple times because I truly believe in what she's doing in the books that she's putting out there. This book is called Hedge by Jane DeLury. This book took my heart by storm. So I started the book thinking that I'd learn about gardening and new beginnings based on that first chapter. But I turned the last page with a new understanding of motherhood, of marriage, and so much more. So the novel begins with Maud leaving her California home for a landscaping job in upstate New York, really close to where I live, by the way. But this move isn't just for her career. It's a trial separation from her husband, too. And it's hard. Her kids first stay back at home with her husband for a little bit and then meet her up in New York. But when she's there alone, she throws herself into her work. And you learn so much about gardening and historical gardening. It's fascinating. She imagines her new life for herself, and she even meets someone that she might share it with. But a completely out of left field, unexpected event changes everything, and Maud is left reeling from the damage. And that's all I'm going to say. This book will leave you wondering if and how a family can heal. And it also will leave you wondering what the price of staying quiet will cost everyone. I really cannot stop thinking about this book. I can't stop thinking about the characters and the lessons that I pulled from it of a life and a life well lived from the book. That's Hedge by Jane DeLury. Now, next is a book that my daughter gifted me for my birthday because we are huge fans of Gilmore Girls. We have watched it multiple times together. It's always on in the background and we're constantly referencing it to each other. And so for my birthday, she picked up Lauren Graham's book, Have I Told You This Already? Stories I Don't Want to Remember. No, I messed it up. Stories I Don't Want to Forget to Remember. See how confusing it is? That's why I messed that up. So I love Lauren Graham, and I certainly love her character, Lorelai. And when I opened it up and read the opening section, I could just hear her. You could just hear Lorelai slash Lauren and the super fast, fun, action-packed writing that she typically has. And if a book could feel like having a cup of coffee with a friendly, funny, talkative author, then this was the book. I love learning more about Lauren Graham, her rise to success, but also those lesser known stories that make her who she is. I love reading about someone's passion and how they arrived at it, and that's what you get in this book. If you love an immersive narrative memoir, then this book is for you. Now, last up, I have one more book to share, and that is the book that we have read as our Get Literate April Book Club selection by Tara Schuster called Glow in the Effing Dark. Hope I didn't offend anybody there. This book, if you have read her other books about Buy Yourself the Effing Lilies, then you know what kind of book this is. You know what kind of narrative it is. You know how immersive it is. And you know the language that you might actually see there as well. I loved this book. I truly loved this book because it was so relatable and real. And it takes someone who had previously published a book on arriving at a really great place in her life and then shows what happens when that place falls short again. And it will, because that's what life is all about. And how do you learn from it? How do you keep getting closer to who you are? All of the big questions that Tara wonders about, she wonders with us as readers. And it was such a wonderful book. I loved it. I read it in 2 days because I couldn't put it down. That's Glow in the Effing Dark by Tara Schuster. If you want a book that's going to make you think, if you want a book that's going to make you question what you're doing, how to heal from things in the past, how to move forward, how to feel better, then this is a book that will give you the spark to do it. What do you know? There we go. 10 books read in April that hopefully 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 of these will spark an inkling for you to read it and go ahead and add it to your stack. So that's what I've been reading. You might be wondering, did you have time for writing or learning or anything else for that matter? I did, but not as much as I did for reading. So for writing, I think the big thing that I've kept up this month that has been very helpful are those good old morning pages. That first thing in the morning, grab your cup of coffee, get your notebook and your pencil, and just start writing kind of writing. But I did some tweaking this month. I saw a post from Julia Cameron, her social media feed, that said if you write in the evening, it's just a recollection of your day that you are not powerful or not able to. I can't remember the exact quote. You're not able to change. But if you write in the morning, you can literally write yourself into the day and figure out the way you want it to go and set an intention. And I spent a lot of time thinking about that because what's been happening in my morning pages is it feels like a recounting of the day before. And I don't like that because the days have been hard and I don't want to start every morning at 4:30 in the morning with a reminder of how hard the day before was, even if it was with a really good cup of coffee. I want it to be different. I want to be able to think differently about the day ahead. And so far, that's been really challenging for me to do in my notebook. But seeing Julia's post and really thinking about the differences of why we would write at night to recount our day because we want to, versus why we would write in the morning to start on a clean slate and think about where we want to go, that was a big thing for me. That shift in perspective, that seeing that rationale between how and when and why we write can matter. I really spent some time with that. So my morning writing, I pushed myself to not just recount the previous day, not just write about what was on my mind, but to write myself into the day. How did I want to feel? What did I want to do? What did I want to accomplish? What do I want to imagine? And it's been a much lighter kind of writing. In fact, that's been the word that I've been tossing around a lot as I do that kind of writing is it doesn't feel as heavy. It feels lighter. And for me, that is a welcome change to what my morning pages have been feeling like. So stay tuned for an episode on some morning page experiments a little bit later. I've also been focused on one other project this month, and that is writing my picture book. Yes, I am writing a picture book. Although it may turn into an early middle grade novel, I'm not sure. But I am exploring the life of someone who is a mentor to me in the area of bibliotherapy. She's kind of considered the grandmother of bibliotherapy and actually brought it to the library and to the hospital well before it was a thing that people were really talking about in the book world in any significant way. And I feel like that story needs to come out front and center. I wish I knew about that story earlier, but I always loved the what is or who was series. And I thought this person needs to have a book like that. We need to have someone that we can look up to as being the grandmother of bibliotherapy and how she helped others use books. Not only that, she's an African American who did this way back in the 1920s and 30s and 40s and 50s, right? When things were really hard. And she pushed the boundaries of bookish therapy, if you will. And I find her story fascinating. So I've been continuing to go down that rabbit hole and to write about it and to think what it would look like to put that story out there so that others interested in using books to heal can have her as an inspiration too. So those are the two things that I've really been focused on in writing, making my writing lighter in the morning and then making it purposeful in sharing the story of someone that I really admire. Now, what have I been learning beyond that? Well, you already know from one of my recent episodes that I went down a really wonderful rabbit hole about the Kindred Spirits mailbox. My podcast guest turned friend, author, Terry Brown, shared with me pictures as she was on one of her walks in very close to her hometown because she knew I would love the idea behind this. She knows that I love notebooks and she knows that I love anything bookish, and she was right. I spent so much time Googling and searching for and finding pictures of, and then searching for places like the Kindred Spirit mailbox. I just had fun. I just had some fun going down a deep, deep rabbit hole. And then I had to share it with you. So if you haven't listened to that episode and you're curious about what a Kindred Spirit mailbox is filled with notebooks on a beautiful beach, then make sure to go back the episode. My other rabbit holes were smaller, or I don't want to say shallow, but I spent some time finding some different snack ideas because I'm getting incredibly bored with the things that I have on hand lately. I also spent some time in a beautiful Google search rabbit hole about super blooms, more of which I will talk about in the next episode. And I spent some time on YouTube figuring out how to shave your Labradoodle at home. So we have this big, giant, chocolate-colored Labradoodle named Coco, and Coco has more hair than he should. It's everywhere, and it's long, and it's big, and it's puffy, and it's beautiful, and it makes him look like this baby bear as we go out for a walk. But all of that hair can get tangled and twisted and matted and all sorts of things that make it almost impossible to brush out. We could brush him on Monday morning, and by Monday afternoon, it is right back to where it started, times 10. So we had to make the decision to shave his hair as we get ready for summer in an attempt to just start over and keep it up from there. We didn't want to bring him to the vet. He has some issues, let's say. He was rescued as a puppy, and so he's not all that good with other people, even though he looks like a big teddy bear. And so we wanted to do it at home so he'd be more comfortable. So I spent some time on YouTube figuring out, how do you shave a big giant dog? What is the best way to do it? How do you keep them calm? What materials do I need? What are the tips and the tricks and the hacks? And ultimately, we ended up doing it with success. We used lots of dog treats, lots of carrots, And we all got pretty messy and hairy and wet from the bathtub. And no, his hair is not quite even, but it's done. He's happy. We're happy. And I learned a lot about dog grooming in the process and certainly developed an appreciation for the people who do this every single day. My hat is off to them. Now, I also learned this week that it is important for me to keep track of what I'm learning. I love reporting to you every month, and before I used to report every week what I'm reading and writing and learning. But when you don't take note of it on a regular basis, it can be hard to remember. This month, I sat down to write the episode and I thought, what did I learn this month? Even though I knew I went down all these different rabbit holes and I had some fun learning some things, I just couldn't recall it. I couldn't remember it because I didn't write it down. So that was an important reminder for me. I want to make sure that I'm tracking somewhere this learning that I'm doing for me, then to be able to share with you, but just to look back on. So I'm not sure if I'm going to do it in my notebook, if I'm going to do it in my printed calendar where I can just jot down some things that I learned or the podcast I listened to, or maybe it's somewhere online in a Google Doc. I'm not sure, but I would love to know from others who find themselves in the planner community or who archive their life in a commonplace book or who just keep track of what their day-to-day activities and life is like. How do you keep track of all of the stuff that you do that you might want to look back on and remember when you took that deep dive or you took that detour and learned about something new? I'd love to know your techniques for that. For now, I've got a Google Doc open that I jot down so that I can better report to you what I have been doing throughout the month. But I'd love some ideas to make that a little bit more fun, and something that I can do regularly, as just another part of my notebooking or journaling or planning routine. So send some ideas my way. And I've got two things that I've loved this week that I wanted to share. Number one is the podcast meditation minis. And I may have shared it on the podcast before of things that I love, but this podcast is wonderful. They literally are quick, short, 10 minutes, usually 10 minutes or less meditations that just lift your spirit. So the other day, the one that came through was a rainy day meditation for depression. It was literally raining in New York, and so I listened to it, and it really did just help. There are other ones about quick meditations to put yourself in a better mood or to get clarity. You don't necessarily have to listen to them as they are released, but just scrolling through the many possibilities, in 10 minutes or less, you can end up feeling a lot better just from a quick, free podcast episode. And then the second thing that I really loved this week has been more recent. I've been doing more giveaways on my social media platforms. I recently gave away a bunch of my printed book journals. It's my Get Literate book journal, a book journal to change your life because we are using the books in a much different way than any other book journal. And we're looking at how they touch our heart and the lessons we've learned and the things that they are bringing into our lives that wouldn't be there without books. So I've had fun giving those away. I've also given away actual books like Belittled Women, one of the books that I reviewed earlier in the month. And I've also given away some digital reading logs too. So if you haven't seen me on social media recently, make sure you're following me at Affinito Lit across all of the social media platforms. And that way you won't miss when I'm giving away some literate love too. It's been a lot of fun to connect with people and to send out that snail mail, which is just, I mean, bookish snail mail is the best kind of snail mail. And it's been fun pulling it together. So that is it for me and my recap of my April literate love in April of 2023. We've got 10 books, two particular kinds of writing, a couple of rabbit holes that I went down, and then some literate love gifted in the form of a book journal and a really great podcast that is sure to boost your mood. So that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed this bonus episode, and I hope that it sparks some thinking in your own literate life and that you'll borrow some of the things that I'm reading and writing and learning, and that you'll share with me what you've been writing, reading, and learning too. So be sure to find me on social media at @AfinitoLit, or come find me at alitlife.com and say hi in the show notes. Thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Get Literate podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to join my Patreon community. There, you'll find additional inspiration for your reading and writing lives, like bonus podcast episodes, book calendars, monthly book clubs, notebooking challenges, live events, giveaways, and much more. It's only $5 a month, and you get instant access to all the previous content too. You can learn more at getliterate.co. But one more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish and no bookish community too. Thanks so much for listening.